Я Вика. Мое полное имя Виктория. Но все называется меня Vika.
Hello.
Я живу
I'm
в
Vika.
Черниговской области.
My name is Victoria really, but everyone calls me Vika. I live in Chernihiv region in the north of a really big country called Ukraine, which is on the far east of Europe. I would like to tell you about life in Ukraine, so I will start with a little history. People lived in our area many thousands of years ago. Remains of the oldest house in the world, 15,000 years old, were found near modern-day Kiev. It was constructed from mammoth bones. Also found in Ukraine, the first map in the world dates back to 14,000 years. The first horses to be ridden, 6,000 years ago, were also in the area of modern-day Ukraine, and their riders invented trousers. The people we call Vikings, from northwest Europe, as well as being known for attacking towns in the northeast of England, were great traders, and they travelled all the way to the city of Constantinople. In Constantinople, they were able to trade furs and amber from their country for valuable goods that had come from the Far East. In those days, there were no railways and motorways, so people travelled along the rivers, and, if they had to, they dragged their boats across land to get from one river to the next. Over time, people started to live in towns along these great rivers, and the largest kingdom in Europe was formed. It was called Kievan Rus. Its capital was the city of Kiev, now the capital of modern Ukraine. Later, the country that is now Ukraine was invaded by Genghis Khan, and the Golden Hordes who came from the east. Still later, it became part of the Soviet Union, which most people in England thought of as Russia. The Iron Curtain, a huge fence guarded by soldiers, was built right across Europe to keep Soviet people in and others out. In 1986, a nuclear power plant in Chernobyl in Ukraine exploded and sent much dangerous dust up into the air. This travelled on the winds all over Europe and even reached England. The greatest damage was done locally, and the area is still badly affected. Many people were made ill, and many children who were born after the accident were handicapped. 20 years ago, the Soviet Union broke apart, and Ukraine became an independent country. When this happened, all the farms which had been run by the state were just abandoned, and all the villagers suddenly had no work. In England, it is less than 1 person in 10 who has no work. But in Chernihiv region, it is closer to 8 out of 10. In England, if you don't have work, you can get help from the government for your house, for your food, and for your children. This does not happen in Ukraine, and many poor people have to send their children to live in state boarding schools. These schools get enough money to feed the children, but very little to clothe them and to teach them. Conditions in the internats, as they're called, are often very poor despite the efforts of their staff. In Chernihiv region, there are 4,000 children living in these homes. As well as the children whose parents are too poor to look after them, there are those whose parents have died, and children who have been taken away from parents who didn't look after them properly or who treated them unkindly. I was from such a home. Mother and her friends used to drink, and then they would burn me with their cigarettes. It really hurt, especially inside my mouth. I was taken away and put in an internat with my brother and 4 sisters. After a while, people came and chose 3 of my sisters to go and live in their family as their foster children. For several months, my brother, my remaining sister and I were left at the internat. It was horrible because it felt as if no one wanted us. In the end, we were lucky and were picked to go and live in a little village called Vaganici in Chernihiv region with our new foster parents. They are wonderful people whose love we really feel. There are 7 other children here, 4 of them older than us, and the other 3 of a similar age. The government gives our new parents money to help us all live, but it is not really enough, so we all work hard on the land we own and with our animals. We try to grow enough crops for us to eat, with some extra that we can sell or exchange with other people. It is hard here in Ukraine, because the winters are often very, very cold, and sometimes people are trapped in their houses because of the heavy snowfalls. The summers are usually very hot and dry. This can also spoil the crops in the fields. When the first children were fostered here, the government did not keep its promises, and if British Humanitarian Aid from Canterbury in England had not been here to help us with the clothing and goods sent out from England, we would probably have been sent back to the internat. This happened to children in several other districts. British Humanitarian Aid, which I call BHA, operates throughout our region helping the poor and the handicapped, especially the children. In England, they collect clothing, shoes, bedding, and toys that children have grown out of or no longer want. These are sent out to Ukraine in big lorries and then split up and sent where they are needed. The region is huge and is made up of several districts. In some of these, the social services help distribute the aid. And in some, it is the Errata Centre that has been set up with the help of BHA. BHA meets all these organisations and regularly tries hard to make sure most of the needy people get at least some help. As well as distributing aid, the Errata Centres support their communities by running varied activities for the children. Some activities are educational, but many are just for fun. BHA also supports music and sport in schools, schools for the blind, and schools for the deaf. It also helps people from birth right up to the oldest lady, who will be 101 years old in 2011. For BHA to do this work, which is so valuable to us, they need help from the people in England. Some other charities help them, some businesses, some schools, some churches, and many individuals. Sadly, the harder times in England have come just when we in Ukraine are going through a terrible time. If there is any way you can help BHA, whether by recycling clothing and shoes, by passing on other unwanted items that still have some use in them, or by making a small donation, it will really help to change our lives. I hope you will be able to help us, and others like us. Thank you for watching and listening to our story. My new family and I send love and best wishes to you all. Goodbye.
Нам помочь. Моя новая семья и я шлем свою любовь и наилучшие пожелания всем вам. До свидания.